Tab 24. We stand inside a keyhole, convinced we see the room. The night sky is our best evidence of that. Every star you see is a different time, a different when, beaming its postcard toward your eyes. The sky is not a picture of now, it's a pile of ancient messages misfiled under present. You tilt your head back in 2026 and receive photons that left before the dinosaurs, before the continents settled, before there was oxygen enough for lungs. If you could peel back the dome and see what those same stars are doing right now, you'd have to wait millions of years for the news. Yet your body is so sure there is a single shared moment. This one, this breath, this now. Something has to give. Hashtag are 2 secret stories you already tell about time. You actually already carry 2 incompatible stories about time in your head. One story is quiet, rational, and a little icy. It says, imagine the universe is a finished film. The whole movie already exists frame after frame, from the Big Bang through the far future. Time is just the order those frames are arranged in. Your life is one thin track of frames through that film. The past, the present, the future, all there, all at once, like a reel in the projection booth. From this point of view, nothing really happens. Everything already is. We don't watch the movie being created, we move along it. The second story is hot-blooded and stubborn. It says, no, the future is not there yet. Reality is more like a book still being written. Yesterday's chapters are fixed, today's page is half inked, tomorrow's pages are blank. As time passes, new pages get added to the stack. The book grows. The past is real, the present is real, the future is open. If you listen carefully to yourself in moments of crisis, a medical diagnosis, a sudden phone call, an unexpected kindness, it's the second story that shouts, this wasn't already written. It could have gone differently. It still could. But both stories live in you. The first is the one you learn from physics documentaries and diagrams, space-time diagrams, world lines, light cones. The second is the one your nervous system insists on when you try to sleep. The tension between them is not a bug, it's a hint. Hashtag of the sky is a machine that breaks your intuitions. Walk outside at night and let your eyes adjust. The constellations look frozen, tribal tattoos inked on a cosmic skin. But wait long enough, tens of thousands of years, and those familiar shapes shear apart. Stars drift, the Big Dipper dissolves. We do not see a simultaneous universe. We see a stack of delayed reports, each mailed from a different address in space-time. Now is an illusion stitched from messages that left home at wildly different times. That simple fact already pulls you toward the film reel story. All those different whens must coexist somewhere for you to receive them in one glance. At the same time, nothing in your viscera will let you believe your own next breath is already filed away in some cosmic archive. So perhaps the question is not which story is right. But what are these 2 stories each trying to protect? The film reel story protects coherence. It makes sense of relativity. Different observers moving in different ways disagree about what is simultaneous. That's easy to draw if the universe is a 4-dimensional block and each observer slices it differently. The growing book story protects meaning. It makes sense of regret, resolve, moral responsibility, the felt difference between before I decided and after I chose. If both stories are trying to guard something precious, perhaps the mistake is thinking we must choose one and discard the other. Hashtag a what if time is a pattern, not a stage. Imagine a stadium full of people doing the wave. From far above, it looks like a smooth ripple racing around the arena. That wave feels like a thing. You can point at it. You can time how long it takes to circle the ring. But if you sit in the stands, you see there is no separate wave object anywhere. There are only people, each with a simple local rule. When your neighbor stands, you stand. When they sit, you sit. The wave is a pattern in those relationships. Now imagine that our familiar space and time are something like that wave. Not ultimate furniture, but patterns in a deeper web of relationships. This is, in sober language, one of the ideas lurking in modern physics. At very small scales, our best theories begin to talk less about a smooth backdrop of space and time and more about networks, graphs, entanglements, connections. The fabric frays into threads. Space and time show up as large-scale habits of those threads. If that is even roughly right, then the question, does the future already exist, has been badly posed. It's like asking, does the wave exist between waves, in a stadium of patient people? The wave is real, but in a different way than the people are real. In the same way, time might be real as the way certain changes hang together, not as a separate river flowing past the rocks of events. Hashtag of the block is a skeleton, not a prison. Return to the film reel for a moment, but with a twist. Instead of tiny pictures on each frame, imagine a tangle of lines, relationships, gravitational pulls, quantum ties, causal chains. The whole history of the universe is a web of relations. Call that web the block. Now zoom into a tiny region of that block, your life, say, or our galaxy. From the block's godlike perspective, all the relations in that region, past and future, are inscribed in the web. But from inside, you only ever contact a fraction of them. Only some threads are lit up by the particular interactions you actually have. Only some possibilities are activated by the questions you ask, the choices you make, the measurements you perform. The rest are like unvisited rooms in a vast building, structurally there, but not part of your lived reality. In that sense, the block is more like a skeleton than a prison. It's a scaffold of constraints. What can connect to what can influence what histories are even possible. But which of those possibilities become flesh, become part of your actual world, depends on where you stand in that web and how you move. From the skeleton's point of view, everything that can happen is mapped into the structure. From the living creature's point of view, things still genuinely happen. New connections become actual, records get written, relationships crystallize. The universe doesn't grow by adding brand new bones, it grows by activating more of the structure, thickening some strands, neglecting others. Becoming is the local pattern of this activation. Hashtag of the future as a fan of dim paths. Picture yourself in a dark forest with a dim headlamp. The trees and paths around you form one fixed layout. You're not changing the forest by looking at it, but your lamp only illuminates a cone of possibilities. As you walk, your cone of light sweeps over new branches. Now imagine that. The forest is the relational skeleton of the universe. The headlamp is your limited standpoint, your body, your instruments, your culture, your questions. Walking is what you call time passing. The future, from your perspective, is that fan of dim paths ahead of your feet. All of them are consistent with what you've seen so far. None of them is yet part of your lived past. As you walk and choose, some branches are taken, others are left in the darkness of might have been. From the forest point of view, the paths were always there. From yours, they become real only when you enter them. The block and the growing book become two views of the same process, one from the map, one from the walker. This picture does something important. It lets you keep the seriousness of constraints. You can't walk through a cliff while honoring the reality of choice. You can take this path or that one. It lets already structured and still open coexist because they refer to different levels. Hashtag a time as the order in which constraints become personal. There is a difference between in principle possible and now inescapably part of my story. Someone somewhere could always get sick, but the moment you see your own scan, that possibility changes status. It hardens. It moves from the fan of paths ahead into the skeleton of your past. It becomes one of the constraints that your next choices must navigate. In that sense, time is not just what clocks measure. It is the order in which constraints become personal. The universe's relational skeleton may be rich with branching structures, probabilistic patterns, emergent regularities. But for an embedded creature like you, time is the sequence in which parts of that structure cease to be hypothetical and become the unchangeable background against which you act. You can call that the growing block if you like, as long as you remember that the growth is not in the skeleton itself, but in the portion of it that has become entangled with you. Hashtag why any of this matters for a life. You could treat all of this as an elegant puzzle and leave it there, but there is a reason it tickles the brain. It sneaks under the skin of how you live. If you lean too hard into the cold film reel story, it is easy to slide into fatalism. Why bother? The frames are already printed. If you lean too hard into a naive, open future story, it is easy to forget the weight of constraints, the stubbornness of systems, the way past harms and structures continue to shape what is realistically possible. A relational, emergent view of time does something subtler. It reminds you that constraints are real. The universe is not clay you can mold at will. There is a skeleton, a web of structure that pushes back on fantasy. It also reminds you that your standpoint is real. Within those constraints, what becomes actual still depends on how you move, what you attend to, which questions you ask, what solidarities you build. It frames ethics and politics as pattern work. Changing systems is changing which relations become activated, which paths become lit for whom, which constraints harden, and which soften. In a world where some people's futures are treated as already decided and others as endlessly open, thinking carefully about time is not a luxury, it is part of justice work. Hashtag or a gentle, unsettling comfort. Maybe the universe is, in some deep sense, a block of relations. Maybe every path the forest can offer is already etched in its grain, but you are not the forest. You are a walker with a lamp, tasting the path one step at a time. From your vantage point, becoming is not an illusion. It is the only way anything shows up. New constraints become real. New records form, new scars and new joys write themselves into your nervous system. The film reel may exist in some abstract sense. The growing book may be an emergent pattern. But the place you actually live is the moving edge where relations activate, where potentials collapse into particulars, where the future's dim fan narrows into a single stubborn line called what happened. If that realization leaves you a little dizzy, a little more awake to each small choice, then time has done its work for the moment.